What we're going to do now is, you can't get too comfortable there, I'm afraid, because you're going to be the first addition to our panel, Allyson. It's going to be a great opportunity for us to tease out some of the themes that you've raised and some of the very thought-provoking observations you had about our fair city. Now, the second part of tonight's get-together is a Q&A. You can tell I don't watch the ABC that often. A Q&A style discussion, hopefully without the violence, featuring a panel of leading South Australian speakers. Firstly, Carolyn Curtis. Carolyn is the CEO of the Australian Centre for Social Innovation, which is one of Australia's most respected social enterprises focused on addressing challenging social issues. Carolyn started her career as a social worker and joined Taxi in 2010 as a secondee from State Child Protection Services. As CEO, Carolyn has grown Taxi from an initiative funded by government to a sustainable social enterprise operating in most major cities across Australia, and she's deepened Taxi's expertise in child protection and broadened its influence into other areas including ageing and disability. She is a director with the Social Innovation Exchange. Thank you, Carolyn. Next up, Don Russell. Dr. Don Russell was appointed as Chief Executive of the Department of Premier and Cabinet here in SA on February 6, 2017. He was previously the Chief Executive of the Department of State Development from 2014 to 2017 and Secretary of the Commonwealth Department of Industry, Innovation, Climate Change, Science, Research and Tertiary Education from 2011 to 13. He was also previously independent chairperson of State Super, a role that he held from January 2008, and he was the global investment strategist at BNY Mellon Asset Management Australia, with BNY Mellon being a global investment company. The fourth and final member of the panel is Rob Demonte. Rob is the chair of the 2017-18 South Australian Social Capital Residencies. He's a Fellow of Chartered Accountants Australia and New Zealand, also a past National President and a member of the Australian Institute of Company Directors. He's a professional company director appointed to a number of for-purpose and for-profit boards, including the Australian Advisory Board for Impact Investing, the Social Capital Advisory Board, the Chartered Accountants Benevolent Foundation Limited, and the President of the RSPCA Australia. He's been a management consultant and a design thinker for over 35 years for clients in the public, private and not-for-profit sectors in Australia and overseas. I'd like to invite the panel up onto the stage. Okay, well thanks for your time tonight, guys, and what we're going to do is we've actually asked a few partners if they would like to ask a question, so please raise your hands if you do. After that we'll get a few questions from the rest of the audience, but we're going to tempt fate here and see if we can beam him in by the miracle of video. Our first question comes from Adelaide's Lord Mayor.
Hello everybody, Martin Hazy, Lord Mayor, City of Adelaide. Great to see you. Sorry that I can't be with you tonight. Congratulations to Allyson. It's wonderful to have Allyson, someone so skilled as our thinker in residence for Adelaide and South Australia. I recently met with Allyson in my office and we had a terrific chat about all things entrepreneurship. I've got a question for you. What does the social economy, what does social entrepreneurship mean to the City of Adelaide at a citywide scale? What are the benefits? I encourage you to have a good think about that and I look forward to hearing your answers. Thank you, good luck, bye for now.
Who wants to kick things off?
I just talked a lot, so I think that one of the other people should kick it.
Well, how about you, Don? You're
it's moderated.
You're the head honcho at government. Let's see what you've got for Martin Hazy. Sounds like he's trying to outsource his own job a bit there.
Yeah, well,
asking for free ideas.
Well, no, that's good. That's good. I mean, one of the strengths of South Australia is that it is a large state, but the preponderance of the population is in the city itself. And one of the, I don't think it's just the current strength, I think it is something structurally a strength of this city, is that there is, because the city and the state are, I mean, in many ways, South Australia is a city-state. And so there is an unusual degree of cooperation between the city and the state itself. I mean, this doesn't exist in other jurisdictions around the world, where there's often a competitive relationship between the state and, you know, the principal city in the state itself. So we do have, I think, a remarkable opportunity to use the city as an active part of the state government's strategy for the state, and certainly in my time here, that has been really very much to the fore. So the fact that Adelaide is a lighthouse city within the Cisco program is good news for the city, but it's also good news for the state, because showcasing Adelaide is really showcasing the state itself. So I think that provides the mayor and the city here with an extra degree of freedom that Melbourne doesn't have, for example. I mean, we've signed on to make Adelaide the first carbon neutral city in the world. Melbourne has done the same, but Melbourne does not have the backing of the state government. Adelaide does. It's actually a key part of the Premier's policy in this area, which means that the capacity to use the power of the state and the commitment of the mayor and the city is really a very powerful thing. So if I was just going to make an observation for the mayor, I would say that he is in a position to utilise the power of the state and the commitments of the state in the area of innovation in a way that his counterparts don't have around the world. And I think if I was going to point him in any direction, it would be just to make the best use of that arrangement.
I'll just add an additional comment if I can, and I guess working, sort of extending one of your slides, which was the graph, love graphs, where we look at where the growth is happening in this state, and it's in the social sector. And the stats will tell you that it is the fastest growing part of South Australia and Adelaide. And so I look at it from a perspective of what's the opportunity. And I think it's growing by about 12%, 12 or 13% at the moment. But you look at other parts of the world, and in the UK, for example, it's growing at 35%. And you look at new businesses, new social enterprises are being created at a much faster rate than your traditional for-profit SMEs. And we know that we're an SME state. We know that we need to find new businesses, new opportunities, rather than relying on the history of what we have today. And so our opportunity, I think, is to learn how others have achieved that, to understand that with the connectedness that we have, that we can outstrip 35%. The New Ventures Institute here indicated that it seems that those new ventures that have a social purpose are much more sustainable than those that don't. And so I think there's an opportunity. There's a great opportunity for us to say, well, here's a sector that is growing. We can capitalise on that through the benefits that you've articulated about the closeness of the city.
You got anything you'd like to add to that, Carolyn? Or?
No, I guess I was just sitting here thinking about the 100 Resilient Cities initiative in terms of also thinking about the power of a city to think about how it harnesses resilience to take us into the future. And so whether we think about our economy, whether we think about our migrant communities, whether we think about food security, a whole range of things that are changing and evolving for us, the city can harness huge power and resilience in terms of really tackling some of those new challenges that we have ahead of us now. And I think some of the entrepreneurship culture that we see in Adelaide and through some of the accelerators that Sue Hitz run and the Adelaide City Councils run, that we can already see that's starting to emerge.
Could I just add one little extra bit to Martin Hazy's question, and I know you're probably still recovering from your half-hour address, Alison, but a lot of the things that he talked about and some of the things in your presentation are probably the type of things that if you're in Peel Street might sound like they're all the go, but how do we get them to the desk of the Mayor of Port Augusta or the Mayor of Elizabeth? How do we make sure that this isn't like a massive inner city exercise and that it really breaks out into suburbia and the regions, particularly those areas where you've got 30%, 40% unemployment and massive social disengagement?
Thank you very much. So I did have some time up in Elizabeth. It was one of the most encouraging places I've been. I was a little reluctant. I'd been hanging around people at universities and really wonderfully well-educated and really driven to do this kind of stuff. And I thought, wow, these people completely get it. This is the easiest gig ever. And I was nervous about going up to Elizabeth because I thought, it's going to be really challenging. Now I have to put my money where my mouth is. And place after place after place that we went to a food co-op where they're doing incredibly innovative things and engaging community in that. They have more volunteers than they can handle up there. People want to be engaged and make a difference. I talked about what was happening with the Holden site and how they'd really tried to be innovative and bring the community in. And it was that we went to Northern Sound system, and this guy works for the council. I go, how do you work for council? You're like completely under the radar. He goes, yeah, and then we get a royal visit and we pop up and go, look how good we are. And then we go back under the radar. And they figured it out. And I loved what you said about leveraging each level of government. One of my social innovations is 2-1-1. People don't care about the level of government. They're the one taxpayer, they're the one citizen. You figure it out and you figure out how to work to make our lives better, and we will work with you to make our lives better. But we sometimes get really caught up in the levels of government and we lose ourselves. And so that's a little bit about taking back our power and as citizens. I know I'm so radical.
I think the next question is from Penny Gale from the RAA. If she's in the audience and wants to ask it herself, she can. If not, I'm happy to put it on her behalf. I know. There's Penny.
Hi, thanks. I'd first just like to add something to the end of Martin's question. And I don't know if anybody have listened to the TED Radio Hour talk on building better cities. But there's a great little piece in there about somebody who wanted to be the mayor, and he went door knocking and met this woman who he said, look, this is a great city, but it could be better. We could have better restaurants and a new airport and this and that. And this woman said, let me show you something, and took it to the back of her house outside and pointed to a swimming pool that was empty and it had kids playing dice in it, and a gazebo that had graffiti all over it and people playing really loud music, and said, I don't actually need to go out to restaurants. I'm a pretty good cook. I don't go anywhere. These are the problems that I need solved to make this place a better place for me to live. So I would say to Martin, go out and talk to the people who live, work or use the city, work out what their pain points are and work from there, rather than trying to do that from within the council itself. I think it's about engagement. But my question's to Caroline. We've heard Allyson talk a bit about what some of the other kind of big businesses and corporations are doing. I'm just wondering if you've got some ideas for the RAA. We've been around for quite a long time. We represent almost 700,000 people in the state. How do you think we could become more involved in the whole world of social capital?
So if I think about our workforce at the moment at the Australian Centre for Social Innovation, we employ people from all across the world. We have people from India, from Texas, from the UK, everywhere, and over a third of our staff would come from there. Yet we have the most phenomenal group of volunteers at Taxi. We have 2 of those volunteers now who are actually doing the main work, the main everyday work in our social innovation teams. And then we also have a whole cohort of carers at the moment who have or are caring for a loved one, who are helping us to create a new way to improve outcomes for carers. These are your members. And these are your members that are providing just spectacular value to my business. And And I think something that Allyson talked about was this concept of intergenerational sort of transmission. In terms of thinking about the future of RAA, I think you've got some of the answers at your fingertips in terms of your member base actually could provide phenomenal, a huge contribution to you if you actually engaged them in the future design and the future generation of your business, because I know that they're creating huge value for my business currently.
Nice stuff. Okay, the next question is from Simon Schmidt from Vinovate. Simon in the crowd? Down there.
I just say, while Simon is getting the microphone, that the other thing, Penny, is you have so many incredible resources and access to, what did you say, almost everybody over the age of 70 is a member of RAA. Like the data that you have that could be made available to help people do good better. Like I know you're bugged all the time for resources, but if you could be, really strategic about where you want to focus and help the community, there's massive opportunities for you to do that. And I really look forward to seeing how your innovation hub plays out and what actually goes on there. That can be a win-win for you, because there is lots of things that I know that you really want to do, and you really have these great aspirations for the RAA, but also for the community in which you live. So I'm really looking forward to see what's happening there. So thanks for your playing along with us in this game.
Yeah, thanks, Allyson. That was really interesting. Excuse me. So I'm Simon Schmidt, the Managing Director of Vinovate. We are into a couple of different areas in our business, but particularly of relevance, one of them's a water purification project. So the work that you guys are doing and the talk about impact investing, those things are really relevant to where our business is going to be going. So we appreciate the work you're doing there. My question is, with any successful enterprise, they require a certain degree of confidence and grit. How might we build these qualities overall with South Australians? How can we really promote that to achieve our goals?
Great. No, you guys go. Sorry, I have my mic on. I said you guys go.
I think that we have, as you mentioned, some great institutions here with the universities. The three local universities and international universities as well. So I think that whole question of grit or resilience, the development of people, we need to leverage and have the opportunity to leverage the expertise that comes out of the universities. Some of the university programs are not just educational in the sense of a typical curriculum, but they are striving to be much more engaged with industry. And so there are a lot of mentor-type programs where they're engaging with industry leaders and others that have been through the wars. So I think that programs that can be led out of the universities that support social enterprises and others that need to build resilience and need to build capability would be really important.
Can I just say as well, someone that I feel is living this every day at the moment for 7 years, it's fascinating because sometimes all you want is someone you can sit down and talk about your cash flow issues with. Someone you can say, you can talk about how you're going to scrape together enough money to pay everyone the next week. And no one likes to talk about these things, but this is the reality of running a social enterprise in the early years. And I can't stress enough what it means to find people that have your back and that you can have those conversations with, and they're not going to go to the next person and go, oh my God, Carolyn's got cash flow issues. But, I think we need to think about how we build this network in South Australia, and a really genuine network. And, the eastern states are asking the same issues, but we have such an opportunity here. We have the beginnings of it, but the key is how all the activities hang together, how we as people hang together, how we have each other's backs in all of this, because anyone that tells you they don't have those times running a social enterprise where they go, I'm having cash flow issues this week, is lying. Well, either that or they've got some kind of magic going on that I don't know about. But yeah, I can't stress that enough, and finding ways that we can help create that for people and wrap that around people.
And Caroline and I have lots of conversations.
Yeah, you do. I'm interested in sort of how that plays out in the public sector, but I would also say in the world of startups, and that's the world that I spend most of my time in, we celebrate failure. We actually issue failure reports. And you know, we went through school and we were told that failure was a bad thing, and in fact, it's not about the failure, it's about what you learn and what you do differently. And we need to create a culture of that, and I think that builds that grit and resilience with mentors with lived experience. I mean, the work that Carolyn has done for this state and the amount of value that she's still able to provide, people should be lined up to be her mentor, and we just have to create those opportunities.
Can I add something to that, Carolyn? Add a question to that. In a state such as South Australia, which has got a much lower number of really big companies, I mean, if you take Santos and Coopers and a couple of others out of the equation, the pack thins out pretty quickly. Given the preponderance of really small businesses here that underpin our economy, how do you convince really tiny businesses that aren't like you, motivated by a commitment to social capital, how do you convince someone with 4 people on their payroll that they should even think about this sort of stuff?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. You know, because I think part of what you're asking there is how do you build that empathy in business, and how do you help connect the dots for them so they see opportunity. But I think some of the work that Mars have done in particular, you see that the social lens actually opens up huge market opportunities. So I think for me, what people don't often realise is 2 things: the market opportunities that come along with social impact, and also the fact that disadvantage in a declining economy is bad for business. And we're doing a piece of work in Dandenong in Victoria at the moment, and businesses don't realise it until it's on top of them, until they've got 90 positions or 90 vacancies that they can't fill, regardless of the fact that they've got a huge population surrounding them that are unemployed. And I think this notion that disadvantage is bad for business is one that we need to be thinking about now. And a declining economy is bad for business. And I think if we can help connect those dots for some of those smaller businesses, then maybe we could get a bit of a shift.
Like Alison's term, enlightened self-interest, whereas like altruism can actually help your bottom line. Yeah.
Yeah, the other thing I would just add is that South Australia SME economy, but what you'd find is that the majority or a large percentage of them are family businesses. And if you're talking about empathy and family values and all of those things, you can't assume that they don't get it. Right? They don't actually understand there's a bigger purpose. Yes, they need to make money to survive, pay the bills, etc. But they actually appreciate something that's a little bit bigger than that too.
Can I just go back to
Yeah.
Can I just go back to the issue sort of grit and resilience and sort of the talent issues that you may be facing in the public sector? Does that kind of thing come up?
I was going to pick up a couple of the points you made, which did strike me as quite pertinent, in that your notion that South Australia is very much a public sector town, and that the other observation that it's a fairly conservative place, and there is a well-entrenched view that nothing happens in South Australia unless it's touched by the government in some form or other, and that does have a deadening effect in terms of grit and resilience. But I would make the observation that one of the consequences of, there are 100,000 odd public servants employed in South Australia. The total workforce is about 800,000, but 100,000 are on the state government payroll. And they're providing services across a wide range of very important areas, health being one of them. But there is a tendency, and it's a tendency in all big public enterprises, where often there's a blurring in the objectives of the organisation, the people they're actually trying to help, and the well-being of the employees themselves. So a lot of these enterprises, government, departments are run, very much for the, for their benefit of who they're dealing with, but the needs of the employees, and this is a wide range of employees, is often a very important consideration, particularly in a conservative state, as you've observed, where in many cases people are very concerned about their working conditions, the way the business is actually run from the perspective of the employees, not necessarily from the perspective of the people they're trying to benefit. But that does provide, at the edges, enormous opportunities for innovation, because in that sort of structure, you're more likely to get innovation outside the mainstream public sector. And the other observation that I would make, and it has been made to me many, many times just by sort of observation, is that South Australia operates on the smell of an oily rag. There are a lot of people here doing extraordinary things on very little. They're scraping together a little bit from this, they're getting volunteers for this and that. They have a very clear idea of what they're trying to do, and they borrow and they achieve extraordinary things. And I think the fact that we do have a conservative state with a fairly entrenched public sector does provide, at the edges, extraordinary opportunities for people who want to do good things, who have a little bit of wherewithal, who can scrape a bit from here, and because they're at the edges, they can do innovative things. They can do things which would be very challenging if you tried to introduce them into a mainstream government department. That doesn't mean the mainstream government department shouldn't be doing this, but it's actually ready-made, particularly if the mainstream government department has been a bit slow in changing the way it operates. It's actually opening up a big gap, and it's that space where what we're all talking about. So South Australia is really, and because people have got into the habit of making do on very little, you can create wonderful things. I've noticed that a lot of South Australians do extraordinarily well when they move to Sydney or Melbourne or whatever, particularly in areas which are largely supported by government, because they're just struck by how much money is available to get things done. All the people they're working with are moaning and complaining about how their funding's been cut and whatever, but the South Australians have never seen it. Regular payments, capacity to plan ahead. So I think that is one of the strengths that you may have overlooked in your summation about the conservative nature of South Australians and the importance of the public sector, is that there are a lot of people doing extraordinary things on very little, and there is a great opportunity for it.
Thank you, Don. The next question is from Kirk Drage. Apologies, Kirk, if I've completely made a hash of your surname there. Kirk is Smart City Entrepreneur in Residence. Thanks, Kirk.
Hi, this question's to Carolyn and to Allyson. Given that innovation happens at the collision of ideas, I wonder if you could share your insights and thoughts and experience in how we can take the best and brightest entrepreneurs in this city and help them get connected to the front end of social services, so that we're really working with the people that have the real problems, and I think, as you said, Allyson, become a lot more customer centric, so we're solving real market need.
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's something we think about a lot. Like, how many people end up thinking about entrepreneurship and child protection, or entrepreneurship and a range of our other most pressing, social issues that are so often seen as purely government's problem that they have to deal with. But we do have to challenge ourselves on the business models that underpin all of those challenges we deal with. It's been really interesting for me. This is a little random, but I'm the chairperson of the Adelaide International Bird Sanctuary. And the coast through the north, there's the phenomenal land, and it's where our migratory birds fly into. The relationship that our Kaurna people have with that land and the Vietnamese community have with that land is quite profound. And one of the most special things about this work is the cultural engagement and the journey that's taken us all on. But the Aboriginal kids and young people have and are continuing to play a huge role, and people that have come from generations of unemployment and are encountering some of those most pressing issues. And what the team from Juna have done is they've taken an opportunity out there and they've said, okay, we're going to run a challenge, we're going to run a competition, and we want your best and your brightest ideas, because we think that you, as kind of cultural champions, along with this amazing land that we have, presents a remarkable opportunity. So we're looking through that cultural and ecotourism lens to take people that have been traditionally some of the most vulnerable in the northern suburbs and said, well, come on, let's think of how we generate new business here, because you hold that intellect. And I think that's the challenge, and I think that's the challenge that I put out there, is how do we get into the corners? How do we get beyond Peel Street? How do we get into the pockets? How do we think about inclusive growth? Because unless we're pushing ourselves into those corners, we're absolutely failing.
Thanks, Caroline. And I would just say that, going back to the elephant, the startups and entrepreneurs and scrappy civil servants, which have not come into my world yet, which is why their quote was not up there, but I want them desperately in my world, that what we really need to do is think about, if the elephant is a problem, then where are the places where we all get to touch it? Where are the places where we all get to define what it is and how we see it? And we're going to create something pretty awesome if we do that. And so whoever wants to take the lead on creating this space, and with the deepest of respect, it's not government. Please don't let it all be led by them, because it's not the only answer. They have a critical part and a critical point at the beginning, at the middle, and at the end. But it's not about them setting the table. I tell the story of the Canadian Task Force on Social Finance. We went to government and said, this is happening in governments around the world. Will you support it? They said, no, but we'll read your report. Okay. And then we had to be scrappy, and we had to figure it out. And we did find a former prime minister to at least sit on it. Our board, our CEO chaired it. I mean, there was lots of pretty wonderful opportunities, and we defined that thing really differently, and there was 6 or 7 recommendations, not 87 recommendations, right? So, and you wouldn't let me have 87, you'd say you need 5 at the most, so really trying to think about how we can bring the skills and expertise of everyone. There's massive opportunities, and the thing is, you just got to call it.
Okay, do we have any questions from the floor? One just here.
So Matt Salia from Flinders University, and I'm going to pick on you again a bit, Don, because I like the scrappy public servant piece. But we've heard from Allyson tonight and in a couple of the sessions about social procurement and how we can better leverage that for some of the outcomes we've just talked about. I just wondered, we're seeing evidence of that, Open State and GoGo events and others that are taking an active role. How could we do better at that? How can we set the levers to allow those scrappy public servants to do more?
Well, it's in the culture, I think, pressure. I think scrappy people nibbling at the edges of government and bureaucracies is healthy and good. I think, chief executives can rise to the occasion. It is helpful if they're operating in an environment where people do expect more. It is easier for an innovative entrepreneurial bureaucrat, and they do exist. It is possible to make almost any system work. It just takes a lot of skill and patience and willingness to push things along. But it certainly makes it easier for entrepreneurial types within the bureaucracy if they're operating in an environment where people are not just looking to government for the answers, but they're being prodded all the time. Not only here in Adelaide, but people are using examples from around the world. It makes it a lot easier for bureaucrats and chief executives who want to do things, if they can then harness the interest. But if everyone is passive, it becomes increasingly difficult for anyone to make any large government bureaucracy to work. So ideas. I mean, my whole career is based on the notion that good ideas drive out bad ideas, but you do need people to generate the good ideas so that people can work with them, harness them, and go about the business of slaying the bad ideas. So, but in terms of, it is one of the areas where there has been quite a deal of innovation in Adelaide, in South Australia, in recent years, is using the government's procurement budget to achieve, not only sensible commercial outcomes for the government in terms of procuring services and goods at competitive rates, but also to be conscious of the other benefits that can flow to South Australia if you turn your mind to not only giving preference to objectives here in South Australia that people want. So that is well and truly in hand. I think we've actually used procurement quite effectively in terms of Aboriginal procurement. That's been worked up to being able to support Aboriginal businesses, but not in the sense of just running the procurement and then waiting for an Aboriginal business to come through the door, but to running workshops to develop the skills and the capabilities of Aboriginal businesses, making sure that not only are they included and given the opportunity to bid, but people are actually working with them. But in terms of the broader social licence, there, and getting back to large private companies, there is a much greater understanding that large companies in South Australia, particularly companies in the natural resource business, large mining companies, they are taking advantage or exploiting assets which are publicly owned. There is a much greater sense that they have to go about their business with a very conscious view about their social licence and its enlightened self-interest. But they have been very happy to participate in programs that the government runs which supports Aboriginal businesses because it facilitates what they're trying to do, not out of it's inspired altruism, but that's the best kind. I mean, but the government has a role there, not actually, enforcing, Aboriginal contracts with mining companies, but setting up an environment where they're actually encouraged, and also that they're provided with the opportunity to make it work. So.
Okay. Well, look. On behalf of everybody here, I'd like to thank Carolyn, Rob, Don, and you especially, Alison. The speech was great. The panel discussion has been terrific. And could everybody please give the crew here a round of applause before they return to their seats? Thank you.
Thanks very much, Tony Jones. David Pemberthy. I feel privileged to be invited tonight to give this vote of thanks to what has been a very interesting discussion, sparked by a very thoughtful presentation by you, Alison, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the whole Thinker in Residency plays out. There's so much I could say, and it's not my job to do that, but I will say a few things, because I've got the mic. First of all, you looked at things at a macro level, at a meso level, and a micro level, and so I want to make a quick comment on each of those. At the macro level, I was really taken with what you were saying about the whole proposition, the whole possibility, the whole opportunity that is represented by social capital in our society. If I were to have one criticism, it would be your graphic. The graphic about the growth areas of employment and the decline areas of employment. It struck me that that graphic conveys the message that all of this is a plan B. All of this is an excuse for what we should do to meet that problem. But in fact, it's a much bigger thing, and you've said that yourself in the very way you've presented all the opportunities that are happening with social enterprises around the world. These are not simply plan Bs, these are a better way in which to do things. I was struck at an article in the most recent issue of Foreign Affairs by Jeff Coughlin and Robert Kahane. The liberal order is rigged, fix it now or watch it wither. And one of the things they say is that Brexit and Trump phenomena reflect a breakdown of the social contract at the core of liberal democracy. Social contract is, those who do well in the market-based society promise to make sure that those disadvantaged by market forces do not fall too far behind. And the whole essence, to my mind, of what you were saying and what I would certainly support in social enterprise, in social capital, is that this becomes an exercise in community, that we are in this together. And you've highlighted the great opportunities for the stakeholders in South Australia, because we have so much going for us, and various of our panellists, Don, you and others, Rob and Carolyn, looked at how those things can work so well here. What strikes me is that we do have issues of co-creating, of co-governance, of co-design. This is not a dependency relationship where community is dependent upon someone else. They are part of the action, co-munity. And that's one of the great strengths of what this is all offering. And of course, as somebody who lived and worked in the northern area for nearly a quarter of a century, and all my kids were born there, and most of my in-laws still live in the area which I was proud to be associated with for all those years, one of the things that always stands out to me from such communities is resilience. And that is a huge community asset that is so often overlooked by all the other ways we do business. But that resilience is there to help create for everyone's sake. Finally, at the micro level, at what you might call the administrivia level, but still critically important, you raise the issues of how some of these things need to be approached. Having been involved in a CEO of not-for-profits, World Vision first, then Anglicare, I know that how often the capacity of those organisations to actually engage in the wider context had its own limitations, albeit successful as those organisations were. For example, raising of capital, and you need capital for investment and for innovation. It's just not in the design structure of not-for-profits to do that. And so you focused on that when you were talking about the ways in which secure investment, capital, asset-based approach. And so there was a great deal coming from that as well. And there's so much more, and I must stop my further comments because I've got a whole page of them. Suffice to say, I'm really excited at this Thinker in Residency. I think this is going to offer us great opportunity. But you yourself said that if this is to be the case, we need to be all in this together. Change makers are all of us. I think, David, you might have said that actually. That's why you didn't call it change makers in residence. You call it because we are the change makers, and we take the fuel, the catalysm that you have brought to it. So, ladies and gentlemen, and may I say our panellists today, Don Russell, Rob Demonte and Carolyn Curtis, you were great in being able to feed off those ideas and bring in other ideas, respond to questions and comments from the audience. And so, ladies and gentlemen, would you join me in thanking Allyson Hewitt, Rob Demonte, Carolyn Curtis, Don Russell, and of course our MC, Tony Jones, David Pemberthy. We're going to be having some refreshments outside in a minute. They'll be sooner when I finish. And so I have some other people to thank as well. First of all, the presenting partners, Meals on Wheels, Helping Hand, and RAA. It functions like this, and of course our university partners, the University of Adelaide and Flinders University. Events like this take a lot of support from presenting partners, and so we certainly want to acknowledge their help. And in addition to that, event sponsors whose products you'll be enjoying, Bickford's and Parade sellers. Again, they become critically important for us. And may I say, for this function, and generally speaking for this social capital residencies and the general Thinker in Residence program, all our partners in the process, and I mentioned the universities, Adelaide and Flinders. I'd also want to mention Department of Premier and Cabinet, Taxi, of course, and it's so great to see that headquartered here in South Australia, and Social Capital. And none of that would have been possible if it weren't for David's team at the Don Dunstan Foundation, Trish, Thea, Colleen, and the interns and the volunteers who come in to help us in the foundation. I want to thank all of them as well. And please, would you join me in thanking all of those? Now, as an example of social enterprise at work, in thanking Allyson and the panel members, I want to say that the Foundation has given each of them a donation to allocate to the organisation of their choice via the Good Thanks platform. And if you were present at the relaunch of Thinkers in Residency, you'll know that this is a very exciting social enterprise innovation coming out of South Australia that is partnered in the social capital residencies. Its principle is simple: when someone does good, you say thanks by making a donation. I would like to thank all of you for being here this evening for this event and ask you to be a change maker following as this whole process goes on further. You'll be receiving invitations for the next residency events, including events with Susie Souza, and David mentioned Susie, the next expert thinker who will visit South Australia from the 3rd to the 11th of July. Is that right, David? And finally, can I also encourage you to other Don Dunstan Foundation events. We have Reconciliation Week events, Reconciliation Week between 27th of May and 3rd of June, so it's coming up, check your diaries. The Lowicha O'Donoghue Oration being a key event in that week on the 30th of May, and Father Frank Brennan is this year's orator. We also have 2 film nights, the screening of Marbo and Vote Yes for Aborigines. And then on the 22nd of May, the Adelaide Festival of Ideas, the Don Dunstan Foundation and Green Industry South Australia will present an event called Transforming Work, How Cooperatively Owned Digital Platforms Create Jobs, with Trevor Schultz, a founder of the platform Cooperativism Movement, and one of Network's culture's toughest critics of the sharing economy. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being part of this. This is an exciting process which I think South Australia has so much to offer by virtue of our history, our present, and our willingness to take on the future. Would you now please join me and all of you in sticking around for a drink and refreshments outside in the foyer. Thank you very much.